lives, we always think about heaven. We always prepare ourselves to go to heaven. When we pray, when we come to the church, one thing that always we have in mind is to go to heaven. And in the process of these thoughts, we also think about those people who are around us. Now, when we think about Christianity, when we think about the Catholic Church, is heaven only for Catholics? Is heaven only for Christians? Is heaven only for those people who believe in the Old Testament and the New Testament? Now, these three major religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, in some way are connected to the Old Testament. We know that. Then a question comes to our mind, what about other billions of people who do not believe anything with the Bible or our tradition? We can think of Buddhism, Hinduism, there are so many other religions, animists, atheists. Is there salvation for all these people? Most probably, the question that was asked to Jesus by this man, he was a bit concerned. He was concerned because Jesus was going from village to village, town to town on his way to Jerusalem. And when he was teaching, there was such a lot of opposition to Jesus. And consequently, there was this question in the mind of this guy who asked, will only few be saved? Dear friends, Jesus answering that question, what does he say? Does he say, oh, only few will be saved? All will be saved? He does not give any kind of positive or negative answer. His answer is a quite different one. What is that? Strive to enter through the narrow door. That's the answer. And that's the answer applicable not only to Christians, to all the people. Entering through the narrow door. Now we will try to analyze what is that particular saying that Jesus says, enter through the narrow door. Now the first word there, strive, it comes from Greek rendering agonizomai. Agonizomai. That is applicable to the field of sports and to the field of war. Now I am going to explain to you what does that concretely mean. Now in the field of sports, dear friends, we know that these days we have been watching Olympic Games and so many athletes winning gold, silver and bronze with a hard efforts, disciplined approach to life. Now I was trying to figure out the fastest man on this planet right now, Usain Bolt, right? And then I wanted to find out more details about this guy from Jamaica. He's Catholic. You know, his name is so Catholic. I tried to find out what is his Catholic name. His name is Usain Saint Leo Bolt. Okay, that is the full name. And then I tried to find out what the medal he was wearing all the time. It is the miraculous medal of our Blessed Virgin Mary. That is the medal he is wearing. Now recently, he has also an invitation by Vatican to defend the liberty of religions. Most probably he will be going to Vatican. Now he is Catholic, that's a good news for us. But then what about his life? Hard work, disciplined approach. He was a cricket player when he was a boy. Someone noticed that he could run so fast. They said, cricket is not meant for you. You need to be a runner, sprinter. And then he took to that, disciplined himself with ups and downs in his life, many failures. He had to give up so many things that he liked, and finally he becomes the world champion. That is what we find, dear friends. Disciplined approach to life, applicable to sports. Now, war. Now, when there is a war, do you think that you are collecting the soldiers. Anyone thinks that, oh, now we are going to go for a war and therefore we need soldiers. No, soldiers are well prepared right from the beginning. They don't start training themselves the previous day or a week before. They are there in the military camp all the time training themselves, all the time training. And I remember my father, who was in the army for 21 years, he told me something that was very interesting. He used to tell me always, you have to get up early in the morning, work hard, you have to exercise and so on. One day he told me a story, what they were doing in the military camp. The generals will come and ask them to dig a huge trench one day, and next day they will ask them to build another trench somewhere else. The third day they will ask to transfer the mud from this trench to the other trench. On the fourth day, the mud from that trench to this trench. And I was thinking, such an absurd thing. What for? What for? My father was saying, that is to keep our bodies strong. We need to have that mental toughness. We need to discipline ourselves. That is what I was doing. So you have to work hard. Dear friends, applicable to our daily life. The principles of war, so we are always fighting against evil. And that's why entering, that is strive to enter. Striving is working hard, disciplining ourselves. And that's why this particular word, agonizomai, helps us to understand why Jesus used this word. We need to be like sportsmen and women. We need to be like soldiers. And then, in order to be disciplined in life, we cannot have an easy life. Now, I remember this year, one of our Indians got a medal. We Indians did not get many medals, And I was jokingly saying that, Olympics, they have only 3 medals: gold, silver and bronze. So we got only 2 medals, 1 silver and bronze. If they would introduce another 2 medals like iron medal and aluminum medal, we might get a little more, a few more medals. Doesn't matter, they have limited to only gold, silver and bronze. That doesn't matter. This woman who got that silver medal, her story is very interesting. Her name is Sindhu. For last 4 years, she has been traveling every day 60 kilometers to the house of her trainer and training for 6 to 8 hours daily. And that is what she got, bronze medal. Hard work, disciplined approach. Dear friends, when we think about heaven, it applies to our daily life too. It is not that Jesus says, well, enter through the narrow door means in our daily lives we must train ourselves to enter through the narrow door is our approach to life. Whether it is exercise, mental preparedness, our food, our approach to our brothers and sisters, everything must be approached with that discipline and mortification and detachment. Very often we might think that, oh, discipline, that is very bad. But when we look at the second reading, we find here the author writing very clearly, my dear son, do not take lightly the discipline of the Lord and do not lose heart when the Lord punishes you. Punishment and discipline are helpful for us to grow, to become better people. Now, I would like to find out what Jesus really meant through his own teaching. Now, when Jesus said, enter through the narrow gate, for me, the teaching of Jesus is very clear. Jesus himself called, I am the gate, I am the door. If you refer John's Gospel, chapter 10, verse 9, Jesus says, I am the gate. So, enter through the narrow door, narrow gate is, we need to enter through Jesus. It was in the Old Testament, the shepherds were putting all the sheep in a secure place in the wilderness with a wall, high wall, around, and there was a narrow gate. And at the narrow gate at night, the shepherd would keep guard. He would have some weapons, he would put fire, he would guard, he would become the gate. And that's why Jesus very clearly says, I am the gate. And anyone who wants to enter must enter through me. That means for us, real eternal happiness we can obtain only when we enter through Jesus' life. That is the first thing. Second thing, when Jesus said, if you want to become my disciple, what you need to do? You need to take up your daily cross and follow me. Now cross, what does that mean, cross? We have daily crosses. Every day there are crosses. I was participating in a retreat. I was a participant, I was not the preacher. And the preacher suddenly asked the participants, they were all couples for Christ, the couples, what cross do you have? Which is your greatest cross? And one guy put up his hand and said, this is my, and people looked what? His wife was sitting behind. My biggest cross is my wife. In our life that can happen. The biggest cross could be my neighbor, my father, my mother, my sister, wife or husband. Anybody could be the greatest cross. But then when we think about the cross, dear friends, there are two things to understand. The vertical bar and the horizontal bar. The vertical bar, in order to have that good relationship with God, we need to work hard in our daily lives. Maybe a little bit of prayer, reading the Bible, reciting the rosary, novenas. And during the summertime, we can go to a holy place, spend some time, not only go to different places to enjoy, but also to a holy place where we can sit and meditate, we can refresh our spirit. That is the way we can gather our spirit, we can gather that spiritual strength. That is how I can relate myself with God. It does not happen automatically. It does not happen just coming for Mass on Sunday. That is also one way to keep ourselves in touch with the Father. The second one, relationship with one another. This is very hard and difficult. We need to know how to adjust with one another. Sometimes we may get angry. But narrow down is disciplining my thought, my action, my gesture, my words. When I have that discipline, my horizontal relationship, the horizontal bar of the cross becomes better. And that's why Jesus says, if you want to follow me, my disciple, you have to carry your daily cross and follow me. The third one, Jesus' reference to riches of this world. Last few Sundays we meditated the rich man who had a good crop, and he said, mine and mine and mine. And Lazarus, the poor guy, and the rich man who was feasting all the time, and the rich young man who came to Jesus. What can I do to enter God's kingdom? Jesus said, you have to follow 10 commandments. And finally Jesus said, if you want to be perfect, you have to sell everything and follow me. Sell everything, give to the poor and follow me. And at that point, Jesus gives a wonderful teaching. How hard and difficult it is for the rich man to enter God's kingdom. It would be easier for a camel to enter through the eye of a needle than for the rich man to enter God's kingdom. Now, does that mean that Jesus was against the rich people? Absolutely wrong. Jesus was not against the rich people. He had wonderful friends like Zacchaeus, Matthew the tax collector, Simon the Pharisee. These were all rich people. But then what Jesus meant was, let not the riches of this world prevent you from entering that narrow door. All our money, wealth and health, dear friends, must help us to enter through that narrow gate. Everything must be a means to enter into heaven. Even riches, health, wealth, our neighbors, our friends must help us finally to enter through that narrow gate. The fourth one, Jesus says, unless you become like little children, you will not enter God's kingdom. Again, a narrow gate. What is a narrow gate? We need to be simple, humble and meek. If we carry our pride in our head, that we are the biggest people, that is not going to help us. That's why Jesus very clearly said, learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. We have to learn from Jesus that meekness and humility. And finally, in order to enter into that narrow gate, we must learn the art of forgiving our neighbors. That's why when Peter came and asked Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? 7 times? Jesus said, no, 7 times. 70 times 7. That means unlimited times we need to forgive our brother and sister. That is another way of entering the narrow gate. Dear friends, life is tough. Life is difficult. But then if we understand what is this narrow gate, that is the difficult path we need to choose. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, it is not only entering through the narrow gate, but there are many people who choose the broader gate or broader road and they are lost. In our life, if we are not disciplined, dear friends, it would be so difficult not only to achieve something in this world, leave alone achieving something in this world, to have a happy, nice life. Now just imagine how many things that happen in the world. If we fill our mind with all that clutter, we need that cleansing spirit. Mortification, detachment, these are words that are bitter. They are difficult to swallow. But then if we are keen on cleansing ourselves, and if we are really focused in our life, that is what Jesus means by this, entering through the narrow gate. Now finally, the last part of the gospel is very interesting. There is a householder who closes his door and people come and knock and say, let us in. And the house owner says, I do not know you. And they will shout and say, oh, we ate and drank with you, you preached in our streets. But the house owner says, I do not know you. What does that mean? The last part, from east and west and north and south people will come and sit in my kingdom. By the very fact we are Christians and Catholics, no guarantee that we will enter into God's kingdom. It is reserved for all people who enter through the narrow gate. And that's why the last part of the gospel is very interesting though. Kingdom of heaven is for all, but only for those people who enter through the narrow gate. That is what the wonderful answer of Jesus to us today. Dear friends, there was a great Japanese spiritual master who knew what is spirituality, who knew what is life. And he was well known. His name is Nan-in. And a university professor comes to learn from him what is the secret of spirituality. And he comes to his home and he sits right in front of him. And this master, Nan-in, wants to offer him his hospitality. And what was that? He wanted to offer him a cup of tea. And he pours tea into his cup. And he pours, and he pours, and the cup overflows, and the tea spills out. And he continues to pour. At that moment, the university professor says, Master, teacher, stop pouring tea because it is getting wasted. It is coming out of the cup. And at that moment, the master stops and says to the university professor, well, if you want to learn something from me, you need to empty yourself completely. If you do not empty yourself completely, you cannot learn anything from me. If you come with your ideas, with your wisdom and knowledge to learn more from me, it would be absurd. And therefore, you need to come to me with that emptiness of mind, emptiness of heart, then only I will be able to teach you something. Dear friends, if you want to learn something from Jesus, we need to be humble, we need to be meek, we need to be simple. We need to carry our daily cross, we need to know how to forgive our enemies, and we need to understand that the worldly riches, if they are only for the sake of enjoying life, they will not lead us into God's kingdom. All things that we have, whether it is health or wealth or money or neighbors or friends or the things of this world, must help us ultimately to enter through the narrow gate, finally to enter into life. May the Lord help us during this week to go deeper into this gospel passage and unravel the secrets of God's kingdom. Kindly rise to pray.